Now, if I switch over to the Data tab, this is where we start talking about the actual data that's in my particular spreadsheet. The first set over here where it talks about external data is Excel can actually be used in a very complex way to get data from a remote source, whether it's a website, which we'll see later, or it's a database somewhere, whether it's Oracle or SQL or MySQL. It can bring that data into the spreadsheet, refresh it, and then all your formulas can work from that point. So that's where this information's from. We can create a connection. So when I get that external data, I can create a connection that I can then call and refresh and do whatever I need to with that. The next one is sorting and filtering. Sorting and filtering is a way that I can rearrange data on my spreadsheet or filter out, which is what a filter is, extraneous data based on a particular attribute or particular characteristic of that data. Then we have some data tools. And data tools is the way that I can convert information from one type to another. Excel is based on cells. You may get a text file that you want to turn into a spreadsheet. Maybe it's a list, an export from somewhere. These are some of the tools that you can use to take that text file and move it into a spreadsheet. And then you can remove duplicates, and we can do something called data validation. We're going to come back and talk a lot about these probably later in this class or in intermediate. And then we have the ability to outline. If you've ever done an outline, you know that it is major heading, subheading. And what this allows is to take numbers and group them and create subtotals so that I create an outline of major categories, subcategories, subtotals, overall total. And it gets very valuable when we start talking about large amounts of data and creating usable subtotals and then taking those subtotals and adding them up to get a grand total moving forward. Last couple of tabs here. One of them is Review. Reviewing tab gives me the opportunity to do a couple of things. Obviously, I have some word style tools or word processing style tools, a thesaurus and a spell checker. It's still going to do those things for me as I'm using a spreadsheet. Just because I'm in a spreadsheet doesn't mean I can get away with misspelling words. So Microsoft Excel is going to help us out with that one. It also has the ability to have comments. You can put comments to the page. You can put comments to an individual cell so that when you get a cell or when you send this spreadsheet to someone, they can actually see and roll their mouse over it and your comment will pop up. Hey, you, make sure you put the total in here. Or hey, you, make sure it's a monthly amount. You can do those kind of things. And the last thing is when we talk about protection and tracking changes. Tracking changes is the ability to give this document to someone, let them make some changes to it, they'll give it back to you, and before those changes take place, you get to review them and either accept them or reject them. It's a great group work tool that allows you to have multiple people using this particular spreadsheet and not overriding each other's changes because you get an opportunity to review it before it's actually accepted. The other part about protecting the workbook and protecting the cells, it's very important if you have formulas that you don't want to get deleted accidentally. And again, we'll talk about that moving forward. And then view is just the way that we're going to look at this particular spreadsheet. We've got normal, page break, page layout, and we've got custom views. And we'll talk about those. And then again, what do you want to show? We saw this before on the home. This is another opportunity to do that. Do I want to show the formula bar? Do I want to show the headings, the grid lines? I haven't told you guys what the formula bar is, so how do I know if I want it or not? Well, you'll see in just a minute. It's almost always something you want to have up. Then I get to zoom. I can zoom in, zoom out on my spreadsheet. Very similar to scaling. I can zoom out so that I put more on my particular page so I can see it all at once. And then if I have multiple windows open, I can arrange them. I can put them next to each other. If I have 4 of them, I can put 4 little boxes. I can have 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom. The point is I'm going to be able to look at those individual workbooks and compare them without actually having to switch between windows and kind of go over one another. The other thing here is freeze panes. And that's important, again, when we're talking about long lists of data where my header is at the top. If I scroll down, I still want to be able to see what column I'm actually looking at. So we'll see how freeze panes works for you as well. And then, of course, we have macros. If you're not familiar with what macros are, they're just recorded series of events. So I say record. I do some things. I say stop recording. Then every time I run that macro, it runs exactly what I just did, what I had recorded as part of that macro. Okay, so that's my ribbon. I do have another one here, which is my File tab. It's a different color. It's a different color because it's my Backstage tab, it's my Just File Attributes tab. We're going to talk about that, but it's really not part of my everyday working with the particular spreadsheet that I've got here in front of me. Okay, so that's my ribbon. Let's go ahead and go all the way to the bottom. I want to talk about the bottom of the spreadsheet before I go to the center. The first thing you'll notice is I have a tab at the bottom. That tab is the worksheet. Excel uses a workbook worksheet analogy. And what that means is it thinks of it as like a 3-ring binder, which is my file. And in my file, I have a series of pages, which they call worksheets. What Excel does is it calls it a workbook, hence the name at the top, Book 1. And it has sheets in that, hence Sheet 1. You'll notice that I have a little plus right here. That's to add another sheet. I can actually take a blank sheet and put it inside my workbook. So when we start talking about sheets and workbooks, just know that a file or a workbook can have multiple sheets. And we'll see that we can actually copy and reference data across those sheets as well, which becomes very valuable. If we move over to the right, we have my scroll bar, which is the right and left scroll bar. This is very important because what Excel does is it doesn't run out of room. You'll notice that at the top of the page here, you see A, B, C, D. Well, that goes all the way to Z. And then AA, AB, AC, and then all the way to AZ, and then BA, BB, BC to BZ. It keeps going. Numbers going down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 999,999. It just goes. So this spreadsheet, even though it looks like it's on my screen, just continues. The more data I put on it, the more I'm going to be able to scroll through that data. That's why my scroll bars are important. Then the green bar down here at the bottom are the other commands that I have for the Excel document I'm looking at. Bottom left-hand corner, it just tells me that I'm currently in ready mode. It's working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. The real value is over here on the bottom right. This is where I can quick launch, just like my quick launch toolbar at the top, my quick launch views. If you remember when we had views, we had our normal page break, page layout. Well, I've got my normal, I've got my page layout, and my page break. So the same commands that I have on my View tab are also available down here on my status bar down here at the bottom. And then I have a slider for the zoom. So if I want to zoom into my document or zoom out of my document, I can grab this bar and I can drag it. Notice I'm zooming in. Or I can actually hit the minus and zoom back out to get back to 100%. So it gives me the flexibility while I'm looking at a document to go ahead and zoom in and out without actually having to go to my View tab that's listed there. Okay, so that's the top and that's the bottom. The center, the meat and potatoes, the actual document I'm working with. Two things I want to point out. One, I have my document and just above it I have one more row. And this is what is called the formula bar. It's called the formula bar, but it really means contents of the cell. Because whatever cell I have selected, that is the contents that will show up in the formula bar. The reason it's called the formula bar is because I use it to enter formulas. Equals 3 plus 5 times 4, which is 45. No, anyway, 60. So that is the formula bar. Over here on the left is the name box. That is the name of the cell that I have selected. You'll notice that right now it says C7. Well, it's called C7 because every rectangle that you see here is the intersection of a column and of a row. So the columns are all letters and the rows are all numbers. So when I refer to a particular cell, I call it by its column row. In this case, C7 or H5, which would be H5. Anytime I click on one of these cells, you'll notice that it highlights the column header and it highlights the row header as well. So every cell has a name, and the name is column row. It's always column row. It's always letter number. It's not 4B. That's the apartment down the hall. No, it's B4. You sank my battleship. Anyway, bad joke. So that is the function of what we've got here. That's the layout of the elements on the screen. Don't forget that we're going to be coming back to these tools on the ribbon. We're going to come back and talk about the different sheets that are in my workbook. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about these cells and what can we do with these individual cells.